Good morning, colleagues. Good afternoon. I see we have a couple of colleagues who have joined us already. Hello, Marco, Freddie, Andrea, Stephanie. We will wait maybe one more minute for other participants to join us. But in the meantime, please feel free to introduce yourself through the chat box. You can type your name, your organization, and where you are joining us from today. Hello, Andrea. Welcome. Hello, Stephanie, joining from Ireland. Freddy joining from Peru. Bienvenido, Freddy. Okay, so I suggest we start. So welcome, everyone. My name is Alexandra Atalla, and I'm working with UNDP's Food and Agricultural Commodity Systems Community, known as the FACS community. And today's workshop, which is, as you have seen on the flyer and registered for, on cultivating an innovation mindset, and is part of the value shift series that we host as part of our program of events within the community. So this is just the first module. When you signed up, you have seen that this workshop spans over 3 sessions. So this is the first one, and we will have 2 more sessions the next Wednesday and the following one. And hopefully by the end of this workshop, you will gain some tools to navigate complexity, strengthen leadership and resilience, and explore some new approaches to collaborative problem solving. I would like to warmly welcome Ben Elers, who will be the facilitator of the workshop. Ben is the founder of the Brain Innovation Project and has worked with UNDP and the food systems team for several years now and offered multiple workshops on agility, resilience, and innovation, all derived from our modern understanding of cognitive and neuroscience. In addition, I also wanted to mention that Ben will be also offering one-on-one coaching sessions. So for those who have, those of you who are interested to in a different format, in a one-on-one format, you are welcome, to sign up and register. After this first session, we will send an email which will have a link where you will be able to sign up. So with this, and before handing over to Ben, as a Kickstarter, we would like to run a Mentimeter. So in a second, my colleague Philippe will put the instructions in the chat box. And you can join in a variety of ways. You can simply, scan the QR code that you see on the screen, or join through the website, putting the link in, or click on the link directly, which is in the chat box. And I see that we have already 2 colleagues who have joined. Maybe we will wait for at least 7 of us to to join, half of the participants. Okay, so we're 7, maybe an 8th person will join. So just for you to know, there will be 3 questions. They're all anonymous, yes, so don't worry, we cannot track the names to the answers, and they have different levels. So we will ask about your life, your work, and the world in general. Okay, so we have 10 participants, so we can go to the first question. So the first question is, name one area in your work where you really need new solutions or some innovation. And this is related to your work life, to your projects. Okay, so we have already some answers spanning from management, knowledge management, time management, behavior change methods, accountability in the supply chains, private sector engagement. I see some interesting threads. Yesterday we had a cohort for Asia and Africa, and I think one commonality is always seeing time management. And we've also had some specific things as well related to agriculture, uh, farmer support systems, etc. Yeah, so I see like a value chain, yeah, to enhance the multi-stakeholder platform, yeah, on coffee chain, coffee value chains. Student engagement activities, farmer outreach, farmer engagement. Perfect. I suggest we go to the second question now. So this one is related to your life, yes, not to work, but to your life. And again, this is, anonymous, so do not, worry, and share what you're comfortable sharing with us here. So we have answers like time management again, which is like, I would say, spans across work and life. Strengthening relationships. We had a lot of this answer yesterday as well. Trauma resilience, self-doubt, helping kids in school, work, and general well-being. Innovation using different apps to digitalize different processes. A better infrastructure for life cycle of packaging materials, products that we have to use in our daily life. Okay, we have also very specific things today. So with this, let's go to the third and last question, which now relates more to the world in general. So we broaden, we move from work, from our own life to the world, although all of them, at the end of the day, they're very much interrelated. Yes, this also appeared yesterday a lot. Climate change, how to tackle climate change, also conflict resolution. We had peace. So providing solution to environmental problems, issues, societal transformation and resilience towards sustainability, efficiency in international relations, uh, governance of the institutions or an institutional level. One more answer. Perceptions around principles of growth. Okay, thank you, and fair and just a transition to a sustainable future. Thank you, everyone, for participating. This was just to as a kind of a warm up, but also Ben will make some reflections when I will hand over to him right now. Maybe a last thing for today. This is an interactive, we are a small group. This is an interactive workshop. For those of you who are able and have a good internet connection, we would encourage you to put your cameras on. And also, if you have any question throughout the workshop, please just feel free to jump in. Yeah, so it's not this type of a panel discussion. It's a really interactive, engaging workshop and safe space. So thank you again for joining us, and over to you, Ben.
Thank you very much, Alexandra, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm honored to be here with you. I love working with people from the FACS community, and my background is actually in development for many years, and I've been working in this more behavior change, cognitive innovation space for the last few years, but I kind of have both of those hats coming into this. Yeah, in terms of the things which came up in the Menti, I would ask you just to kind of like hold these somewhere at the back of your mind, that these are the kind of things that hopefully you're going to come up with some ideas, insights about over the next three modules, next 3 weeks. But we're not going to formally go through them, but these are really things just for you to hold on to. As Alexandra said, just jump in if you have any comments, questions. This is not formal. No need to put your hands up and wait for questions and answers. We will let's have a conversation. So here's the game plan: cultivating an innovation mindset. Just a chance for anyone who's perhaps in the wrong workshop to save yourself a couple of hours here. This is what we're not doing. We're not talking technical thematic aspects. There's not going to be talk of integrated land management, this kind of thing. We're talking, so that's really important, but it's not this workshop. Right? We'll get to talk about some of these thematic issues perhaps a bit more in module 3, but certainly not today. And it's also not about innovation as an organizational process. It's not talking about design thinking, where there's hundreds, thousands probably of books, university courses, companies on this. We're not talking about this. Here, we're talking about mindset and your brain. Right? So, as I say, I will not be offended if you decide to say, if you say this workshop isn't what I thought we were doing, and you just jump off. Okay. Here's the plan. We're going to be looking at this framework: adaptability, agency, aspirations, and internal state. And today we're going to be looking at the framework as a lens to think about things. And there will be more talking by me today than in modules 2 and 3. So Alexandra said that this will be highly interactive, but today, because it's all about setting the framework, there will be me talking quite a lot, but jump in. Module 2, internal state, really important and a lot of fun, right? Where we actually start digging into much more detail of this thing here, the plus in the AAA plus framework, and it's often something I think which is sorely missing from discussions around innovation. And hopefully this will be something fun as well as useful. And then in module 3, we will be returning to the framework and a little bit more of using it a little bit more as an analytical tool, right? This module 2 is as you will see, I won't give it away, but it's not it's more the feeling aspect of this, whereas module 3 is more the cognitive aspect, the analytical aspect. And today, this is the plan. Is I'm going to spend a bit of time actually framing this rather than just rushing into this is the framework and presenting it. I want to build up a little bit slowly because I think it's important to understand what the framework is. Then we will discuss the framework, and then we jump into world models, predictive brain, the neuroscience stuff. And at the end, we kind of wrap up about adaptability, the importance of embracing uncertainty. And just to flag this, many of you, I guess, will have many of these concepts won't be entirely new, and people will have heard about them maybe with different language and coming from different angles. And so I think one of the beauties of all of these things is when things start coming together, which you already know anyway, but it's just in a sense framing things in different ways, perhaps much of the time, and that's useful just to stretch existing models. Another thing, just before we start, although we're talking mainly about individuals in these 3 modules, the basic framework is it works for communities, food systems, teams, you name it. Right. So, but again, we've only got, although there are 3 modules, it's only 6 hours we've got together, which is less than 1 day to cover a lot of stuff. And so we have to narrow it down a little bit. And as I say, do jump in. Any questions, comments, ideas, all welcome. I get excited by this stuff. So if I talk too quickly, tell me, right? I will not hear otherwise. Just a bit of framing. Innovation, what do we mean? Well, there's lots of different definitions of innovation, so I've just gone for the simple dictionary trick of something, just the idea of a new idea, method, or device, but the idea of novelty. But it's not just about novelty, it's about something useful and introducing it. So I could decide that I'm going to go to work from now on standing on my head. That would be novel, but it probably wouldn't be useful. Okay, so innovation, there is this notion of introduction as well and usefulness. Whether or not you think robots are useful and doing something better, another thing, right? But it is about the introduction. Mindset. Look, there's lots of different ideas about mindset, and there are books written about mindset. There simply isn't just one clear definition as to what mindset is. It's a construction, our ideas of mind and mindset. So here we're just using it as in a generic umbrella term with the notion that it's the beliefs, attitudes that people internalize in their lives, the patterns that people internalize inside. But 2 important points to emphasize here is it's not about one mindset, that we have a mindset, but we have both an all-encompassing mindset, but also lots of subcomponents. And often these contradict each other. Right? I mean, it's not that we are all these super consistent people. Well, I'm not. Maybe you all are, but I don't know many people who are when they're honest. Right? We all have our big contradictions, right? And actually, that's, as we'll see, that's kind of the key to change. If we didn't have them, and they're both stable and yet changeable. You know, mindsets in some ways they have certain characteristics which are lifelong, but things also change, and also quite fundamental things can change very quickly given the right circumstances. So that's what we're talking about here, mindset. Put them together, and we've got the internalization of the beliefs, habits, and mental models, which generate new and better ways of doing things. This is my definition. It's not formal. Nobody's certified it. It's just it's this general direction. I don't know why I've got the term mental models, because I think, as we'll see, I think it's more than just mental models. It's not just a mental thing at all. It's more than that. But anyway, any comments, questions so far? Making sense? Okay, I will proceed unless told otherwise. So just laying the ground for this framework. These are, you know, I'm sure many of you have come across these terms: embodied, embedded, and inactive cognition. But I think this is really important to frame the framework within these contexts. What does all this mean? Well, let's just take a step back a minute. And I'd like you to hold out your hands like this. Hold out your hands, your arms, and stretch them out. Here, by your shoulder, is where life began. Life on Earth began. Right? Here is what? Wednesday, the 3rd of September, 2025, right? At the end of your fingernails. Where do you think humans come into the picture on this? Whereabouts? Fingers? Anything else? You give yourself a manicure, shave your nails off, humans have gone, right? We're that recent, right? And the point of saying this is that we're so stuck in our concepts, our analysis, and how we make sense of things. And that's important. I'm not trying to downplay this, that we forget that we're part of a much, 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 much larger and longer process, right? And so in this case, if you did put the unfortunately this timeline of, if you put the Earth in 24 hours, it's a bit out of date, because there's new evidence showing that life began even earlier than we thought. But the Earth in 24 hours, it's not until about 10 to 9 that the first multicellular life, tiny like little worm-like creatures, appeared. Up until then, it was all unicellular life. Humans appeared about 6 seconds to midnight, and food and agriculture, or first settled agriculture, about 2 seconds ago. So we discussions around artificial intelligence, this kind of thing, all these issues which are climate change, you'd need an atomic clock to measure how new these issues are. And yet they're, of course, all consuming for us. But there's a bigger picture behind this. What's the point of saying this? Well, when we look at life, essentially all life, whether it's bacteria, unicellular organisms, humans, dogs, trees, or whatever, you have living organisms pursue biological goals, right? And when we say pursue, there's essentially two things they do. They need to act on their environment to make sure they don't get eaten and they have enough to eat, to basically, threats and resources. But also they need to maintain the internal environment themselves. They need to be healthy, need to make sure they don't fall apart, right, in order to survive. So there's these two things. There's the internal and the external relationship, and that's how all living organisms, in one way or another, function. Putting it another way, agents, things, adapt and aspire, right? They adapt to their environment through evolution, through learning, right? Their anatomy, they develop poisons to keep off predators or whatever. But you've essentially got agents adapting to their environment and aspiring. Basic biological processes for all life forms. But then you've got humans who come along, with the nail at the end of the nail and mess it all up. We go and put on these cognitive goals, right? These self-determined things. Going to the movies tonight, loving each other, whatever, right? Self-determined cognitive goals, which are built on and part of nature, but they're also, as far as we know, dogs do not say, okay, well, in 3 days' time, I would like to have the chicken dog food rather than the fish, right? They don't plan ahead in this way. So this cognitive stuff is very, very new. And yet it's arguably what defines the difference between humans and other animals, and we are animals. And the point here is that humans, although we think of our cognition as so unique, we're repurposing our biological machinery. Right? It's all still there. It hasn't gone away. All living creatures, they have to make sense of their environment in some way. For trees, have to make sense, is it night or day, to whatever. We give meaning to things. Animals, squirrels, bears, they forage seeking resources. We forage seeking knowledge and information. Avoiding, with pain. It's the same areas of our brain which are active when we have physical pain and mental pain. We will see changing perspectives from different angles. We will come to a specific exercise about that in next module, where biologically, where animals or see things from different angles is actually quite similar to us seeing different points of view. Bad food. If you've ever if you crack an egg and it's off, right? You retch. It's disgust. Same areas, more or less, of our brain as when you see politicians who disgust you, right? Disgust is disgust is disgust, as far as we're concerned. And so our cognition, yep, it's very, very different, but we have to be careful we don't divorce it from our underlying biological way of functioning. And we will come back to this a lot in the next module, right? This is quite fundamental for state change. So how does this all relate to the framework? In a sense, this framework is merely the cognitive level, right, put on to, it's essentially the cognitive level of this, right? It's that here. Right? And I would just like to, we will come back to this in more detail, but let me explain this a little bit as to what's meant. this is not normative in terms of trying to tell you how, what's good, what's bad, and how we should behave and how we shouldn't behave. It's more descriptive in terms of actually describing. It's value free in a sense at this moment. Just trying to put how we actually work. We adjust. Let's start with this, the adaptability. We need to, as with all life, we need to adapt to our circumstances. And I don't just mean passively react, but proactively be have behavior which is adaptive, right? Which is useful, which is a fit to the environment. It's not just a passive thing. And we do this essentially through learning and action. And we're going to come back to that a little bit more later today as to what that actually means. And learning and action, we'll see that they're actually much more closely related than we think. Aspirations, the direction and driver of the system, right? Because this is a system, right? The where we want to go, no longer just biological, but it's also the types of things we want to achieve, but also who we want to be. But the thing I'd like to spend just a little bit more time on is agency. And it's this sense of belief in capacity to make choices and take action. And it's not an objective situation about the world, whether or not you're free to do this or that, or what the constraints are. This is about your sense, your personal, your sense of what you can and what you can't do. And it brings into issues such as, your feeling of command over your own thoughts. I think the highest form of agency is choosing how you react to a situation. Right? So many different ways of reacting to situations. Um, it's resilience, your belief in your ability to bounce back. In other words, it's this sense of that you are somehow in the driving seat in your life. And it's not an objective thing. Here, we're talking about your sense of it. Because how you actually adjust to circumstances is up here with the adaptability. This is about your beliefs about yourself and your capacities. And all of this is in many ways driven by and often drives our internal state, right? Which is the sum of our physiological and psychological state at the moment. Often this is the same as feeling, right? I'm feeling energetic, I'm feeling bad, I'm feeling whatever. It's not exactly the same, but feelings are often how we experience it. And we're going to spend a lot of time on state because I think it's really, really, really critical. But that's in module 2. But one thing just to emphasize here is that all of these things, although they're shown as 3 separate points, they're actually all entirely related. So, for example, if you have really high aspirations in life, I don't know, you want to be a world tennis champion, right? That's your aspiration, but you don't have the agency, you don't have the sense of belief. What's going to happen? You're going to feel crushed all the time. You're not going to be there. It's going to be a huge mismatch. If you have a big sense of agency where your aspirations are tiny, you're probably going to be bored and frustrated all the time. Right? These things are, and if you have a long, big sense of agency and a big sense of aspirations, but you have no idea how to actually do anything and learn, it's not going to work out. Right? So these 3 things, they fundamentally interact with each other. They're not separate. Right? And what we will see, particularly in module 3, is that you can intervene at any point within these systems to identify a problem, a challenge, where you're wanting to go. Because all behavior is essentially going to be one of these things somewhere within that, right? All all options for innovation are going to be within this somewhere. Either what you do, because adaptability is kind of where the rubber hits the road. It's the interface with the outside world. This is where the innovation happens, but it's also going to happen, be a lot driven by your internal state, your sense of agency, and your aspirations. Any questions or comments at this stage? Does that, we're gonna circle back to this again and again and again. So it's not that we have to discuss it once and then that's it. We will be coming back to this, but this is just an initial show. But are there any questions of clarification at this stage? Something that if you don't get this, you're going to feel stuck. Anybody there? Okay, nobody there. Oh, there's somebody there. Okay, okay. This is at least that there is life. Look, I only say this because sometimes when you're talking to a screen, these Zoom things are always a bit strange for all of us. And it's it's just not the same as face-to-face stuff, huh? But anyway, we are where we are. And we're going to in the chat box there will be some more specific definitions of agency, aspirations, and adaptability, right? Something you can download. But I don't want to spend too much time on going through the exact definitions, because as long as we get the overall picture, I think that's much more important than the definitions. Right. And I've sent some additional definitions across, which again, they're not universally accepted, but it's more important to get the sense of what agency is, the sense of aspirations, the sense of adaptability, and do that at your leisure. But I do think this is absolutely key, and we're going to return to this a bit later now. So all of this is to say that this model is based in nature, right? It's based in our brains, our physical flesh and blood brains. And our brains don't exist in isolation. They're embedded in the world around us. Our cognition is embedded in the world around us. Our cognition only makes sense in terms of in relation to things. Right? If there was no things, we wouldn't have anything to. Is there such a word as cognate about? I don't know. But to do cognition about, right? Our cognition is embedded in the world around us. It doesn't exist as an abstract thing. It can't. It's embodied within us, right? It's not a separate thing. And of course, most of you have thought about, heard about, think about, experienced the whole mind body, brain body connection issue. My take here is that there's no connection at all, because to be connected, there have to be two separate things at some level, right? That our brains and our cognition is fundamentally, it's a sub part of the overall living organism, right? And we will come back to this, because I think this is quite important. We'll come back to this in module 2. It's inactive, and this is really important as well, is that our brains don't exist to come to UNDP organized workshops or do crosswords or get, I don't know, lie awake at 3 o'clock in the morning worrying about tomorrow, right? We can do all of those things, but our cognition actually exists and comes from our need to act within the world and to control our bodies. right, to make sure they function. And if all of this seems very abstract, hopefully it shouldn't, but hopefully you'll see yourselves a bit in here. We're going to do a little exercise here. You know, like pirates used to do this to their friends, enemies, former friends anyway. Walk the plank of wood. They'd have to walk along and, you know, fall into the sea and die a horrible death. We're going to walk the plank, but there will be no deaths or bad endings here. But I want to do a little exercise with you where hopefully we can experience a bit more intuitively what this framework is about. And this walk the plank exercise will hopefully bring this out. In this exercise, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes because it's an exercise in the imagination. And the exercise, I guess, will take about 3 or 4 minutes. And you can, you know, keep your eyes closed until it will be clear when the exercise is over. And the important thing is here when you do this exercise, two things. First of all, don't analyze the exercise when you do it and wait until afterwards. Then we can do the analysis. During the exercise, just go with it. And the second thing is there's no wrong way of doing this. Don't go, oh, did I hear what you said? What does he mean exactly by this? I got this wrong. No, whatever. Doesn't matter. You'll be fine. You'll do it perfectly, however you do it. Okay, so just relax, enjoy it. So I would invite you just to close your eyes and just go down a little bit. Just relax. Feel your feet on the ground. And imagine that in your room, there's a plank of wood on the floor. And this plank of wood is lifted up at the sides. It's off the ground by 3 or 4 bricks. And I would like you to imagine that you get up, walk across the room, step onto the plank of wood, and walk along it. And now I'd like you to imagine that you're on top of a huge skyscraper, maybe in New York or somewhere. And joining your skyscraper and the neighboring skyscraper is a plank of wood. I'd like you to walk across that plank of wood. And don't look down, it's awfully high up there. But don't worry, if you're finding that difficult, help is at hand, because standing next to you is Wonder Woman or Superman, and you can just pull them into your body. And as you do that, you take on their powers, and now you can run and jump across to the neighboring skyscraper. And why stop there? This is so much fun. You can run and jump or fly across to the next one, running across the skyline of New York or wherever, doing twirls and twists in the air, feeling free. And now come back and walk across the plank of wood to the neighboring skyscraper. And notice how easy it is. Now you can open your eyes and come back. Now, what happened? What happened? Could you do it? Do feel free just to unmute and say something if you want. No, nobody
Yeah.
could do it. Please.
Yeah. So, hi, Mathieu, from France. So yes, I don't know, I just followed the what you were saying, and yes, I did it. It was quite easy, and actually the return, like walking back on the plank of wood, was indeed much easier. At the beginning, it was like a bit of fear, even with imagination. But indeed, at the feedback, like the coming back was just like so easy, like not even looking downstairs or, you know. So yeah, very interesting.
And what happened here is just through your imagination, your internal state changes here, right? I mean, for many people, when they do this, and I'm sure it's the same for many of you, you physically feel it when you look down, you're walking across that, it's your heartbeat, you can feel yourself sweating just
Yeah,
through
yeah,
your
yeah,
imagination. It's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
crazy.
yeah. Because I have this, fear of looking down. So, and it was quite difficult to walk, even just like by imagination.
It's
Exactly. Yeah, I
crazy,
felt it in the body. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's crazy.
right? And and just through your imagination, it changes the other way. So, and what's happened is through your imagination, your state has changed. It's not just your analytical. Okay, now I know that if I've got Superman's powers, I can walk across the plank or fly. It's like your whole physiology just changes like that, right? And so your sense of agency is transformed. The situation hasn't changed. You've still got the skyscrapers and the planks of wood, but your sense of agency has changed. And now your aspirations are much bigger. I'm not just going to walk across this plank of wood. I'm going to fly, right? I'm going to run. I'm going to enjoy it. And I'm not suggesting here. I'm not suggesting here that you should spend your whole life thinking you're Wonder Woman or Superman, right? Or feel free to. Maybe, I don't know if that's maybe that's a good thing. I'm not suggesting that. I'm also not suggesting it's always just about being positive and upbeat and believing in yourself. I'm not suggesting that, right? And we will come back to this in module 2. It's that your state determines a lot as to what you think you can do and what the options are available to you. And by changing that state, you change the aspirations, adaptability, and agency, right? And so we're going to spend a lot of time on this in module 2 because I think it's absolutely critical. Please,
Hi,
yeah.
Ben. Oh,
Yeah. Sorry. Oh, yeah.
no, go ahead, Matthew. I'll ask after.
Oh yeah, sorry. I just want to, I don't know, I'm going to share if this is possible to share something. I've been
Please.
working a lot with visualization also and imagination, and I've been working and I mean discussing with colleagues who are working with women who gave birth, and there is this re-education of perineum after birth, and they use a lot imagination and visualization in order to have the like the body contract again with the muscles, and they use this imagination and visualization of a water of wave coming from the ocean and rolling at the back of the womb, which is
Right.
like a cave. And my colleagues tell me that even the women who didn't feel the contraction on their body, just doing the visualization, actually the muscles were contracting physically. Just it was just
Uh,
in yeah, yeah. Mm.
and I mean, there's this classic study of where
Mm.
where people were trained for 4 weeks every day. They had to press down with their finger or their thumb, right? And it was measured, but the strength of the pressure they could put on before doing it. And then there was another group which just imagined it, right? I mean, imagine doing that for 5 weeks anyway, right? And I mean, the results were crazy. It was I think it was something like 30% or 32% increase in pressure by the people who actually did the exercise, right? They could, after the 5 weeks, and it was 25 or something like that, just through imagining it. And there's loads and loads and loads of studies confirming this, all right? And it's, and so, yeah, and we're going to use imagination quite a lot in module 2. But anyway, thanks. Somebody else was saying something.
Yeah, I was gonna ask something about the exercise.
Please, I don't know who this is talking, but whoever.
Oh, this is Andrea Dixon.
Oh, okay,
Sorry.
okay. I don't see
Yeah,
your
sorry.
picture, so I didn't see the mouth moving. Okay, yeah, hi.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask in the exercise where, you know, you sort of harness the powers of Superman or you feel more powerful. How is this in terms of the framework? How is that not adaptability? How is it agency? Because to me it feels a little bit like you are changing the way you're adapting to the environment versus the agency aspect. So I just wanted to ask that.
Well, my take on it, my what the purpose here is, what you're doing is you're changing your internal state, right? Your
Mhm.
your physiology. It's like your psychology and your physiology, but also you're completely changing your agency, right? You're building that sense of agency, and the adaptability is giving you new options as to how to actually adapt to the situation and your goals. And so the point of this, in a sense, with the exercise, was to show that this agency, adaptability, and aspirations and internal state, they're kind of the same thing in many ways, or they're incredibly closely related, right? And we tend to break things out and say, oh, this is my goal, this is the way I do it, this is my, but what I'm trying to show with this is that it's just such a tight knit system.
Okay, yeah, because it's all within the mindset.
It's all within the mindset, and
Okay.
and things that we things that we divide are actually much more similar than we realize. But
Mm-hmm.
we'll come to that again. Module
Thank
2, I
you.
keep on saying it. Yeah. Okay. We're going to take a break in about is that okay, Andrea? Does that more or less cover it?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. We're going to take a break in about 10 minutes, right? Just a short break, but just to carry on a little bit more, because we've still got quite a lot to get through. And I know I'm talking a lot, but I want to try to give the background to where we're going with this. So let's just have some talk about moving on a little bit. We talked about mindset, imagination, but let's just move on a little bit and talk about your predictive brain. This man, Carl Friston, I don't know if people have heard of him. And it look, nobody's work is, all builds on previous things. He is, one of the most cited neuroscientists in the world. And many think of his ideas as basically, the Einstein of our age. Somebody really pretty pivotal. And if you go to a lot of neuroscience departments in universities, it's like he's the man, the god, right, of this stuff, his ideas. And he's he's scientists, highly mathematical models, but there's also philosophical kind of interpretations of his work. And essentially, putting it in words, he puts it in numbers as well. Right? This is our basic operating principle. All of our behavior, learning, perception is in this. All brains operate to minimize their uncertainty or surprise between their pre-existing model of the world and the world itself. And this is the basic function, and not just brains, but all living organisms, right, in this way. And just one thing to emphasize here, two things. Uncertainty or surprise can be good or bad, right? You can have a bad surprise, like you come home one day and your house is burnt down, right? Or you can have a good surprise. You can come home one day and there's your friends have organized a surprise birthday party for you when you think everybody's forgotten. Right? So it's not it's not good or bad. It's just about the gap between your expectations and what you experience. Second thing to emphasize at this stage, if you look at this, it says nothing about accuracy. Right, so it's not the brain is seeking to maximize its accuracy of the world, its objective accuracy. It's seeking to minimize the gap between its model and the world. Right, that's an important thing because we think that we're all objective and accurate. But let's dive into this a little bit more. How would you know? This might sound like a silly question, but indulge me, please. How would you know if you'd hit a tennis ball? I'm not a tennis fan, by the way, so I'm not trying to promote tennis particularly. Anything else? How would you know that you'd actually hit a tennis ball? Please just say, type.
From the rebound, no?
You feel it in your hand.
You'd feel it in your hand. How else?
From where the ball goes to.
But how would you know where the ball goes to?
You see it.
Right, you'd see it. You'd hear the click.
It's
Yeah?
senses. Yeah.
It's senses. We cannot experience the world as it is. We cannot physically. There's no way of doing it. All we can do is experience and make sense of the world through our sensory input. Our brains are locked away in a dark box, our skulls. Right? They don't experience the world directly. They experience the external world, right, through our senses, and also the internal. And there's more senses than that, but let's leave that for the moment. And also they have to get signals from the internal world to make sure the body is functioning, right? Homeostasis, right? It's sometimes it's difficult for us to get our heads around, right? But your brain is stuck away, right? And these sensory data, this is all electrochemical signals, so it doesn't even experience the light directly. And it all comes together to provide you with the ability to function in the external world and to remember to breathe and to remember to eat. It's astonishing stuff, all without our awareness. Right? There's all this stuff going on. And within this model of these three, the three A's and the plus, you have to realize there's a lot of stuff. Remember that all of this is based in our biology and our biological heritage. It's not just cognition. There's a lot of stuff going on under the surface. And what it does is from this sensory data, it builds models of the world. Right? And it's from these models of the world that it acts. Right? And it develops and so it has these models of the world. And they're not models of the world. They're models of the world as it affects me, my place in the world. Because remember, the purpose of the brain is to keep you alive. Right? And it's always monitoring the internal in relation to the external and vice versa. So the contents and function of this is it develops and tests. So it develops and tests the model. How does it test the model? It acts and receives feedback from the world. Right? So it's locked away in a box. And the source for this is our biological drivers, right? Our instincts, our biological heritage, built over billions of years, right? Still at the processes, and our life experience. But in this model, it's not just a model of the world in terms of tennis rackets and tennis balls, right? It's it has within its model all of the drivers of behavior as well, and the options. So the agency, the adaptability, the aspirations. Right? So we don't experience, even though we think, you know, we think that we experience the world as it is, we simply don't. We experience our model of the world. Right? And that model of the world is a model of ourself in the world, or the world as it affects us. And our internal state will drive a lot of this. And so you're not seeing the world, you see and experience your model of the world. And just to make it even more scary, everybody else is experiencing their model of the world. All behavior makes sense to that model. And as we'll see later, all behavior derives from this model. So actually one of the important people behind this whole work, it took me a long, he stated in one interview I saw, and it stayed with me. It took me a few weeks to go, oh, wow. He said, there's no such thing as maladaptive behavior. All there is maladaptive models. All right, because all behavior is driven by the model. Right, there's nowhere else the model that the behavior comes from. And I mean, this has huge implications for in all sorts of the ways we understand criminal justice systems, behaviors, wars. I mean, it's huge, and so we won't go there. But just to say that for us, there's nothing apart from the model. Right, and we're all rational people, aren't we? Right, but it's our model. And just a couple of things more about the model before we break. I just want to finish this section. I just want to finish this section before we take a break. This model, as we said at the beginning, it's not our model is not just one model. There's lots of competing models. So this lady here when she's playing tennis, she'll have one model of the world, including her aspirations and adaptability. All right. But when she's having an argument with her daughter or whatever, it will be a different context. And so she will bring a different set of adaptability, aspirations, agency. Right? There's different configurations according to the context. Right? It's not one model. It's contextual. Right? Our models. And as we'll see later, the context or the framing you give to a situation fundamentally affects the way we think about it, and therefore our possibilities for innovation. Right? But we'll come to that. It's dynamic. It's not a set of memories. Memories inform this and experience inform it, but it can generate novel perceptions and actions. I could say a word, I could make a sentence up, goggle, huta, mula, mutu, or whatever, which I guess that sentence was completely unique and nobody else has ever said that series of sounds. Right? I mean, maybe they will, right? It can generate new patterns, new ways of doing things, right? It's not just just fixed. Hierarchical, it has deep-seated beliefs about the nature of the world, like, does God exist? Right? The meaning of life, through to if I move my arm like this, I will be able to grab this glass of water. Right? It's hierarchy. It's got everything, that and in between. It's short and long term. It's short term, I want to have something to eat. Long term, how can I plan for my retirement? Right? It's all of these aspects. Critically, it's constantly generating hypothesis about the world, because remember, the brain is stuck away but in your skull. It's essentially generating a hypothesis about the world. It's predicting. And how does it know what's going on in the world? Well, it has sensory data. So it's generating predictions about the sensory data that's going to come in, and it tests them. Right? So that's how we know about the world. And this is what we mean by a hierarchy. You have all of us in our models, and this is whether it's neuroscience or psychology or I don't know, sociological things. I mean, this is not new, right? But we have these deep-seated priors and assumptions, right, which are quite stable and somewhat fixed, right? Our sense of self, gravity, things fall down, not going up. And there's these higher level grounded things, and then it goes all the way down to raw physical senses, signals such light, touch, sound, right? And when it's hierarchy, our models include all of this. And whereas we like to think that we experience the world as it is, right? That's what we said. So generally perception would be a bottom-up thing, right? That's traditionally how it's thought of. This is saying exactly the opposite, that perception is a top-down thing. It starts with our background expectations, right, as to how we make sense of the world, and it goes down, and we have these raw physical signals, and it's our prior assumptions about the nature of the world which are driving our perception. But in a big way, not just a little way. All right. It's not just, oh yeah, of course, I mean, my background assumptions help me make sense of the world. No. It's saying something more fundamental than that. Right? That our models are in charge. And so the raw sensory data which comes in, right, it's strong, it hits there, but it doesn't, whether it's a bee or a wasp, it doesn't really make it all the way up to challenging our priors or assumptions. Right? It's not relevant most of the time, the physical signals to our higher level things. And what this means is that our priors, our paradigms, our expectations filter and drive the raw data from the world. All right? It's not that we're seeing the world as is. I keep on saying this. And so, for example, probably many of you, if you listen carefully, maybe there's traffic in the background, right? Or your computer's making a noise, or there's a dog barking, or children playing, or whatever. Your brain is filtering it out, right? Because it's not seen as relevant, right? You're in a cocktail party, the cocktail party effect, and you're engrossed in a conversation, and then you hear your name somehow mentioned the other side of the room, and your brain fixes on it. Why? Well, all of a sudden that's become more relevant because it's when somebody's talking about you, it's a threat or an opportunity, right? And so you're starting to get up to here about goals, morals, how people interact. Something's becoming relevant at a higher level, but it wasn't relevant to your conversation, so you're filtering stuff out. And if you look around your room, just now, you can see billions of different things, right? Billions. There's little pixels, little colors, little dots. And we're filtering. How do we filter? According to our assumptions, right? And our models of the world. And as we'll get to just after the break, And I hope you're seeing that this is this relevance with innovation, because if we're seeing all we're seeing is our models of the world, right? There's not much space for innovation, right? This is the point, and that's why I'm spending a lot of time on this, is because it's so critical. It's not just a oh yeah we have world models. It's like, no, we really have world models, right? And we have to be able to step out of them and that takes deliberate effort, right? And we think we do. And after the break, what we're going to get into is this. But we've got a problem, Houston, right? Our brains are operating to minimize their uncertainty, surprise, that's their driving function. But the world is an inherently ambiguous place, right? Is it a duck or a rabbit? Well, it's both. And it's neither, because it's lines on a thing, right? And so we've got these two kind of like problems going on. We want to reduce uncertainty, but the world is full of uncertainty, right? And how we match this is where the space for an innovation mindset basically arises. That's where I'm going. Okay. With that, we're going to take a bio break for just 5 minutes. Yeah, and as Alexander said, please stay on Zoom during this, and I'll see you in 5 minutes. But if anybody has any questions or reflections, then we can come back to that. But see you again in a few minutes, 5 minutes. Hello. This is I think that's about 5 minutes. Any comments, questions? We're going through a lot. Is there any reactions? Is it making sense? Okay, it makes sense, at least, apparently. But we are going we're trying to spend time building up as to the depth of this model. It's not just a theoretical kind of thing, but it's actually grounded in how we work. So this is where we were. It's where we left it. We had this problem is that our brains operate to minimize their surprise or uncertainty, but the world is inherently ambiguous, i.e. uncertain. And to demonstrate the way that we're trying to minimize our uncertainty, oh yeah, it's full of ambiguity. Just to make this point, that the same thing can produce different perceptions, right? We perceive it as a duck or a rabbit, but you can also have different things produce the same perceptions, right? So you can perceive what? What do you perceive there? What's that? Blades of grass, yeah, well spotted. Yeah, some types of grass. Yeah, there's something else in there. Hoe? Ah, we're getting closer. Rice. Yeah, well, maybe it is right. I don't know. But here, there's these things here, right? So you can have two different things which can produce a similar perception. How's your brain going to make sense of this? Well, it will look at context. It will be hierarchical. If you're in a forest, walking in a forest in Finland, and you see this brown thing, you're probably going to think it's a piece of wood, right? If you're in the desert somewhere, in the outback, and you see a brown thing, you're probably going to assume it's a snake first, right? I mean, that makes sense. So your context will shape your actual perception, right? But then, of course, you start seeing the piece of wood jumping up in the air and hissing, well, you know, pieces of wood don't do that. So you're drawing on your prior knowledge about what pieces of wood do, and you better quickly realize it might be a snake. So again, we're constantly in this cycle of hypothesis testing, constantly, every microsecond, but also throughout our lives. And in terms of making sense of uncertainty, look at this picture here. There's lots of optical illusions, but this is actually kind of my favorite one, because you can't hold this. It changes. Look at it for 10 seconds. It changes. And you think you can hold it, and then it doesn't. Sometimes it stays going down, sometimes it's holding over, right? Your brain is trying to make sense of it, and it can't be both. Your brain doesn't, that's not the way the world works, right? So it's it's imposing its prior knowledge about how the world works on this. I've done this, shown this, and only one person ever has said, no, it doesn't change to me. And he had done boxing all his life. So he kind of like left the workshop kind of bit worried that he had some damage done, which was not the purpose of the exercise. So it's one or the other, not both. Our brain doesn't like both, doesn't like ambiguity. And here's another one. Oh, I need to just sorry, I just need to just to share this. I need to do my sound as well. Here's another illusion, slightly different. Oh, where's that? Hold on. Stop sharing. Sorry, I just need to share. Here's another one. This is showing this a bit strange. Does it look big or is it a small thing? No, that should be okay now. So on my screen, it's just showing as a small little thing. Here's another illusion.
At any one moment, we are being bombarded by sensory information. Our brains do a remarkable job of making sense of it all. It seems easy enough to separate the sounds we hear from the sights we see. But there is one illusion that reveals this isn't always the case.
Ba, ba, ba.
Have a look at this. What do you hear?
Ba, ba, ba. Ba, ba, ba.
But look what happens when we change the picture.
Ba, ba, ba. Ba, ba, ba. Ba.
And yet, the sound hasn't changed. In every clip, you are only ever hearing ba with a B.
Ba, ba, ba.
It's an illusion known as the McGurk effect.
Ba,
Take another look.
ba,
Concentrate first on the right of the screen.
ba,
Now to the left of the screen.
ba.
The illusion occurs because what you are seeing clashes with what you are hearing.
In the illusion, what we see overrides what we hear. So the mouth movements we see as we look at a face can actually influence what we believe we're hearing. If we close our eyes, we actually hear the sound as it is.
So our brain, right, from all this ambiguous signals, it's actually prioritizing the meaning of stuff. So it has a conflict, says, okay, sight is more important than sound here. And so our interpretations of the world, right, and our brain puts together all these different things and provides us with one unique, one sort of like unified experience. And we don't even question it normally, but it's a construction. And you might go, okay, so what? This is kind of interesting, but what's that really got
Open
to
our
do with
eyes, we
anything?
actually see how the...
Well, it matters because it has consequences. Here, we've got shapes and colors. This is what we perceive, right? I'm British originally, right? And these shapes and colors are, they come together. That's what we perceive, the raw material. But this has hugely different meanings for people. Right? I mean, if you're in a country which has been a victim of the slave trade, this can be an awful thing to see. Whereas for the populist right in the UK, this is a symbol of pride. Right? And what you're going to see, and your previous reaction and your previous model is going to determine your reaction. It's not the flag itself. Right? So for example, in my case, I might be wrong. If I see too many Union Jacks outside houses, my assumption is that there's somebody living there with pretty strong nationalist views. I might be wrong, but that's where I'm bringing my models, and it determines what I see. So it matters, this stuff, right? And the real change will happen when it happens higher up the hierarchy. So we're coming sort of like on the final stretch here on this part here, and then we'll have a chance for some conversations. Adaptability and noticing uncertainty. So remember, our brains are trying to close down uncertainty, but here we want to explore a little bit about the uncertainty, because this is the space which provides us, well, it's the space for adaptability. So what we've said is our prior beliefs and expectations, our longer held beliefs, generate immediate sensory predictions, right? So in the case of the tennis player, if she's a world champion, she's gonna know just from the sound of the ball hitting the racket whether it's a good shot, right? She's gonna know it. So she's gonna have predicted that she's hearing these things. And it's a weird thing to think about. So actually, when you're trying to hit a ball, you're not trying to hit a ball at all, or all your goals. Actually, what you're trying to do is generate the sensory data. All right. I mean, that's kind of that's what we're actually trying to do, right? But anyway, so your longer term beliefs generate immediate sensory predictions. And when the sensory data from the world matches, your model is reinforced. Right? So remember, we're just right. So your model is reinforced of the world. But when there's a clash, you've got an error between your prediction, because your brain is predicting the world. Right? It's not waiting for the world to happen. It's providing expectations and predictions as to what's going to happen next. I'm going to walk. I lift my foot up and I move the weight of my body forward. My prediction is that I'm going to feel the sensory data in my foot on the floor as I take a step forward. And all of a sudden my sensory data is that my foot is sliding. Then I correct. I've got a prediction error between my prediction and the sensory data. Remember, all brains operate to minimize their uncertainty or surprise between their existing model of the world and the world itself. No prediction error, no possibility for change, no possibility for updating the model, no uncertainty. Yeah, model just gets reinforced. Here, there's something to be resolved. And there's two options for resolving uncertainty. You change the model or you change the world. Doesn't matter which, because the point is to reduce the uncertainty. So to use a trivial example, my model is that there are always apples on my kitchen table. Right? That's just my mindset, my model, whatever you want to call it. Okay. And I walk in and there aren't any apples on the kitchen table. Uncertainty, prediction error. What do? I can't hear anything.
Go buy some apples.
Exactly. You can buy some apples. You can learn. You've got two options. You can learn. Ah, there are sometimes apples on my kitchen table. So you've updated your model of the world, right? Or you put some apples on the table, right? You're changing your model, or you're changing the world. And the point is that whereas we think of as learning and thinking and acting as something separate, two separate things, all right? We talked about, perception action loop, right? Perception, cognition, action loop. What this is saying is something very different, is that both of these things, that perception, learning, and action, they're two sides of the same coin. They're such a tight system, it almost doesn't even make sense to talk of them as separate things. They're all in the same, they're all there to serve the same purpose, adaptive purpose of keeping us alive in the world, right? And they're the same mechanism, right? Or part of the same system. There's a third option, which is what? Ignore the data. All right. Maybe you're coming in to get your keys. All right. And this was not considered relevant. All right. And it was still, your brain was still kind of probably saw it, just like at the cocktail party, it's scanning what's going on, but it wasn't relevant to the situation, because the context that you'd given to the situation, I need to get my keys because I'm late for work, determined what you paid attention to. All right. And this is important because remember, without the error, there's nothing to change. There's nothing to act on or learn. There's no space for innovation. Right. And so what you pay attention to, so you have to notice what you don't know. You almost have to create uncertainty and exist in the gap of uncertainty for innovation to take place. And that means uncertainty about your agency, your sense of self-belief, your aspirations, your adaptability. The whole thing is about embracing that uncertainty. So our brains are constantly going, this is what they're doing, because it's the model itself. This is the weird thing, it's the model itself which is determining what we pay attention to. All right, it's filtering. So essentially it's asking, what's the estimated value of this information in this context for this task, right? So in the case of the apples, the brain, it's like there's no value as to whether or not the apples are on the table, because I was looking for my keys. All right, so it was irrelevant. And so our key sort of like entry point or leverage point is to turn up the volume on what we're paying attention to, and to be paying attention to what we don't know rather than what we do know. And this is quite a radical thing in some ways, right? When we're all experts, educated, highly educated, do lots of things which work already, right? Have our experiences and etc., and our strongly held beliefs in justice and whatever, and better food systems and how things should work, right? And that we should have more, climate change is a bad thing, and whatever. We have all these assumptions, but if we want to innovate, we need to be able to understand what we don't. We need to be able to focus on what we don't understand or know yet, not just what we do know. It's not saying about leaving your expertise behind, but here we're talking specifically about the context of innovation, right? And that means fundamentally at all levels being willing to explore what we don't know. And if that sounds daunting, it's kind of, as we'll see in module 2, it's actually in many ways quite a lot easier than that. It's actually not so difficult, right? Because it all depends on our internal state. right, as to whether we're seeing change and uncertainty is threatening or something exciting, right? And that's to do with our state. So again, it's going to depend on attention to where you're, what are you paying attention to? The light, sound, touch, the raw physical sense signals, or are you paying attention to the context and the meaning that you're giving things? Because once your attention is going up here and questioning some of these things, the changes happen much quicker down. Right? But we'll get to that later, the thing. And with that, so the basic point of all of today, and it was quite a long time to say it, but I hope it made sense that we went through it. Where's the error? Right? Where's the uncertainty in the system? Because in our models, if we don't have the uncertainty, there's no change. But if we want change, we need to be able to understand what's holding us back from that change. Where's the prediction error? Where's the uncertainty? Where are the things we can resolve? Where are the gaps between our aspirations and our agency? Right? If our expectations are not working, and our sensory data is not meeting our expectations of a better world. Right. So let's say however you define that, our expectations, our deep-seated expectations is of a better world, and we're not seeing it, right? Or we're not really seeing in a big way how we're contributing to it to a maximum of our ability. Where's the problem? Where's the error? Is it in our aspirations? Is it in our sense of agency? Is it our adaptability, the strategies we're using? Because or is it just in terms of our internal state? Or is it all of these things? Because there's always going to be a gap somewhere. Otherwise, you're in system sort of like stasis, where everything's just exactly the same and nothing changes, right? It just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and your expectations are just a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the point is, you have to be able to create uncertainty in here, but not too much. That there's a kind of boundary, and I do think that state is really a very, very, very key concept in here, which we get to next week. And with that, hold on, actually just one more thing. And with that, we've kind of come to the end of module 1. And we've gone not just the framework in detail, but also what the framework really is and some of the background, and we've tried to pull it apart a bit. Module 2 is we'd look at internal state, which I've been talking about a lot. And then module 3 is a little bit more of a, well, okay, great, this is all very nice, but how can we actually use this in more of our cognitive, analytical kind of ways? Right. But I don't think this will make sense unless we have that, because this changes what we mean by that. And with that, we do have, much to my surprise, because there was a lot to get through, some time for comments, questions, discussion, feedback. Floor is yours. Please, Mathieu. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was really, really, it is really highly interesting. I was wondering, I read some work also about neuronal systems that is also, so mainly, of course, in the brain, but is also connected some of in the heart and also in guts. So making the 3 brains in the body. And that was also connected to the senses, but also what was related to what on some papers we call, it's called authenticity. So that goes beyond just those 5 senses. So is it like the work you are exploring? Is it just the brain in the head, or is it similar for that other cognitive system.
Yeah. No, okay. It's yeah. I mean, for many, well, in particular, Antonio Damasio, I mean, he's not the only one, argues that actually that our neuronal system in our stomachs was the first brain, right? That was the first thing. So it's all about taking in resources and digesting and getting rid of waste, right? The heart has a lot less neurons, right? But I guess there's stuff which is starting to be discovered more, but the brain gut thing, yeah, it's all part of the nervous system, right? It's all
Nervous
part
system,
of one
exactly,
thing.
exactly.
It's all part of the nervous system, and how to put it? I focus on the brain. Well, when we get to module 2, right, we will say that it's not just the brain, right? I will totally contradict it and go, actually, it only makes sense in terms of the whole living organism because it's one integrated thing, right? But I focus on the brain for 2 reasons. One of them is I think it's disingenuous. While you're right, I think it's disingenuous for us to when we look at our global problems and our global issues, not to say, okay, the big thing which distinguishes us from other animals is our cognition, right? It's just I mean, it's our brains, right, which are building airplanes, polluting the planet, causing wars and whatever. So I think while it's true, entirely true, that you have to take the whole system, and I think that's particularly with internal state, I also think that if we don't kind of say, okay, well, actually there's something different going on with our cognition, then we're deceiving ourselves and as to where we are as humanity. All right. I mean, that's what our difference is. So there's a little bit of that emphasis. The second thing is, how do I put this? I don't know. I try not to try and be delicate here. No, I just say what I think, right? Right. There's a lot of speculation which goes on in terms of how we work, right? In terms of some, and for me, some pretty, I don't want to insult anybody here, right? Some pretty esoteric stuff going on, right? In terms of our interpretations as to how it fits together and whatever. And I'm sure you're familiar, you've heard of this kind of thing. And that's fine for a lot of people, but it puts as many people off as it does excites others, right? And I do believe that we need to if we're going to solve the problems that we all face, we need to be able to kind of like talk on in some kind of like common languages. And some of the language I hear about the 3 brains and whatever, and vibrations and whatever, it puts a lot of people off, huh? And I'm not saying that you're saying this, and I do feel that we need to be able to appeal to different traditions. And in a sense, what I'm talking about here, for example, it's a lot of the stuff here would be the Buddhist traditions would say a lot of the same things about this, right? But I personally believe that evolution is the key thing. Evolution, and none of this makes sense. Our lives don't make sense. Our future of humanity don't make sense in terms of, except for in the framework of evolution. And so I'm trying to deliberately skew this a little bit towards evolution, rather than, even though I realize it's not the whole picture. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's kind of where I'm coming from.
No, yes, it makes a lot of sense. And I was really more on the really just biological level, including those. But this is true that the second is more on the so there's from what I read, not a lot on the heart, but more on the guts, indeed, stomachs. But that was like, this is really part of the system. So I was just wondering. And on the evolution, so I'm more working on trying to better understand the traditional and indigenous knowledge also around some topics. And the topic you highlight, for me, it's very much connected to evolution. And part of the evolution is indeed for me the evolution is innovation. So it's very much related to that. And So no, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And of course, even our nervous system is. Of course, our nervous system is part of other systems and our immune systems and how they, and our understanding of this stuff is just changing all the time. All right. It's not that we know everything. Thank you. Anything else? I apologize, by the way, for the blurred background. I hate having blurred backgrounds when I do it, but it's just I'm in my daughter's bedroom and she's a teenager and you don't want to see the posters and the mess and the whatever. So if I'm sort of like silhouetted and looking particularly red, it's I hope you can live with it. Any other comments, questions? Does it make sense? Does anything, do people think it's do some people think it? No, I think what you're saying is doesn't resonate at all. That's also interesting. No.
I'll just throw out there. I mean, I appreciate it. I think you set it up really well for like the next 2 steps in the series, because that's where my brain is going now. It's like, okay, well, how do sort of like our underlying internal states determine like what we perceive as potential uncertainties, or like how we can go and kind of push ourselves toward more innovation, because that drives what we see as potential pathways forward.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Yeah, I think just framing it in the sense of like we're looking for uncertainty, and like that's what can help us move forward is helpful to me, at least in the context that I'm working in. So thank you.
Right, and for us to, and the key thing is like with the Superman and the Wonder Woman, right? Thing is not just whether or not we can be powerful and feel like we're going to change the world and we can fly, but how we're in that state of where uncertainty becomes something beautiful, all right? Curiosity, all right? Without having, where we exist in an internal state which is curious about the world. And it's not just an intellectual, it's not just an intellectual, oh, I am curious about the world. It's a physical sense of curiosity in the world as well, about we're feeling curious, we're feeling generative, open, relaxed, we're not feeling the world as a threatening place, because if we're feeling the world as a threatening place, we close down, right? And then and so uncertainty then becomes a threat. Whereas if we're in our internal state is one of joy, right? Even in a crappy world, in many ways, and so I do think that agency, that almost the highest form of agency, is our ability to choose how we react to things, not what we do, but how we react to things and to choose our reaction. And to me, that means ultimately to choose our state. All right. And there's a Kalpana. I don't know if I've said your name right.
You did. Thank you so much.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I'm going to be a little honest. And just to say that I think I'm feeling a little bit more confused after your session. And primarily because I think I'm also coming from 2 clear spaces. One is I do practice meditation, mostly the Buddhism side of meditation and vipassanas and things like that. So, like how do you look internally within the brain and make sense of the world? There are certain tools and techniques that I have been practicing, which has been very helpful. But then second, I think within the work, how it interfaces is that I work with an environmental organization. We work with nature-based solution. We try to create, economic, social tools that are helpful for people and communities. Lives are entirely different, and with very different type of privileges than what I am right now. So one of the things, what I really appreciate about your talk is how do we use different nodes to make sense of the world, right? And perhaps all of us can at least start from one node, even if the others may not make sense to us right away. So I really like that insight. Where I feel a little confused and perhaps need a little bit more clarity is how do we bring value systems within this whole understanding of how do we make perception about this world? How do you understand the world in the way, because we come from certain context and background, and because our life experience has been very different compared to others. And I think that point is also very important because, like you said, the British would really look at, slave trade as an ingenious economic model, whereas the countries where this actually took place really look at it as a form of abuse and control. And so as a person who is knowing both sides of the world, how do you situate yourself and allow some of the lived experience to formulate as part of your way of looking at the world, and then eventually take some actions around that? So I think on that part, I'm a little bit confused on why, is there a particular reason on why the value system is not interacting a lot within your framework, or if that will come later on as well? Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a very, very, very good point, right? It doesn't come, all right? And because what I'm trying to do here is that there's lots of different schools of thought on this. I think there's a lot of work done on values, right? I mean, there's a lot of work done. There's a lot of work out there, like the inner development goals, right? This kind of area, and I think there's a lot of work out there in values. And what this is trying to do here is which are more sort of like normative, right? In the sense of trying to say this is something positive. This is how we should be. What I'm trying to do is, I agree with all of this. I mean, I say my background is in the, I'm not a neutral actor here, but what I'm trying to do more is, rather than say how we should use the tools, say these are tools which you can use in your life and in your work. Right? So in a sense, that the system that I'm trying to describe, the system itself is value free. Right? The action, adaptability, aspiration. How the values that you will put within the system are going to come from you. Right? This isn't this workshop. It's not saying they're not important, but they're not. This isn't this workshop. In terms of there was another point that you. So I'm not trying to downplay them, right? But your aspirations are your values, right? In the sense of, what you aspire to be, what you aspire to achieve, right? But it's also part of your agency, right? Your values is to part of my agency is to, I don't love, create peace, and I can do all of this stuff. So values is everywhere, but I'm not taking them out as a separate piece here. But in terms of how you can hold different perspectives and still act, right? It's another point you mentioned, I think. Right? How do you you have these different perspectives and different things, but how do you act? You mentioned this, Kalpana, yeah? I think this is a key thing, and we're going to talk about this in module 2, which is our brains want to put the world into either or. All right. Whereas the key is both and. Right. And once we start to accept the ambiguity in the world, right, it's both and, it can fundamentally change the way we look at things. And so this is something we'll come to in module 2, but I just want to come back to this value thing one more time. People have very, very different values, and people explain values in very different ways, right? Values, the language we use about them are human constructions, basically. Right? They're not key things. And I'm not going there in this workshop. That's not to say that it's not critical, but it's just not what this is about. Right? And I'm sorry you're more confused, but hopefully it's a good confusion, right? Hopefully it's an uncertainty, right? And it's, as we've been saying the whole time, it's uncertainty, and it's potentially in the confusion, the uncertainty, which needs to then be resolved. So in a sense, put it this way, a big prediction error has been created, right? This is the space for you have the space for something different. No.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think we both can sit perhaps with that thought until the module 2. Maybe that would help, because I think, like the way I'm looking at it is, you can take some learning and really reflect upon yourself. So it could be more like an internal reflection space where you can test different concept and see what it means for you and how you can put yourself into that space. But maybe around the innovation side, I think ultimately who we are and what we make of this world would also determine the alternatives that we see around actions and innovations.
That I totally agree. And this is what I'm trying to say the whole time in terms of the hierarchy. Oh, absolutely, as to how we see the world fundamentally determines everything else. That absolutely, I'm saying that this is the highest part of the hierarchy. All I'm saying is that here is that we're not going to discuss what those values are, right, or should be. It's not, the values are critical, right, but we're not going to go through an exercise of what are our core values, what are our driving forces, right? But we all have values which are driving us. It's just we're not going to examine them here. Anything else? But thank you for that. That's I like that. Nothing else. Last chance. Okay, Alexandra, thank you.
No, thanks to you, Ben. Thank you for all the insights. And also thank you to all the participants. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your inputs. Those of you who would like to get in touch directly with Ben, you can see his email in the chat box. As I mentioned in the beginning, there will be also an opportunity for one-on-one coaching. So stay tuned as well for this opportunity. And with this, wishing you all a good afternoon, end of your day, end of your morning, depending where you're joining us from. And we hope to see you next Wednesday.
Thanks. Goodbye.